All right, today we're doing a deep dive into, well, one of the most consistently challenging topics for any organization, really. We're talking about the ethics of asking for money, for contributions, financial commitments, and this really complex idea of what genuine stewardship actually looks like.
And our sources for this are centered on some really powerful reflections on the Apostle Paul's writings, specifically 2 Corinthians chapter 9.
Yeah.
So this deep dive is, I think, for anyone trying to navigate that messy intersection of faith and finance. Our readings focus on this principle called no pressure prompting.
No pressure prompting, I like that.
The idea is to move past just the transaction of money and really get why authentic giving has to be a willing act, an act of grace, not, a response to pressure or manipulation.
So for you listening, our goal here is to draw a really clear line. We want to define what genuine grace giving looks like.
And how it's different.
And how it's different from those high pressure, often emotionally draining appeals that so many organizations use just to meet their budgets. We'll be using some very specific and sometimes surprising examples from the source material to bring this all to life.
So I think we should just start at the beginning. The central instruction Paul gives in 2 Corinthians 9, because it really sets up the whole tension perfectly.
Right. So Paul's preparing to arrive, and he asks some brothers to go on ahead of him. And the reason why is to make sure that a contribution they had already promised, a committed donation, was ready when he got there.
Yeah.
He's basically sending an advance team to follow up.
And this is where all the nuance is. The critical distinction, and this is straight from verse 5, is that Paul wanted the contribution prepared so that it would be shown to be made willingly.
Willingly.
Not reluctantly, not out of compulsion. That willingness is the absolute baseline. If your heart isn't in it, the gift, it doesn't matter how big it is, it just loses its spiritual value.
So here's the high wire act the sources talk about. Paul is following up on a commitment. He fully expects them to keep their word. So he clearly doesn't think asking for a commitment is wrong or, unspiritual. But at the same time, he's incredibly careful to avoid any hint of pressure.
Right.
That tension expectation without coercion is just fascinating. How did he actually pull that off?
Well, he did it by focusing on the spirit of the gift, not the amount. His method was all about preparation, not confrontation.
Okay.
He wanted them to get organized so that when he showed up, they could present this gift that reflected a kind of thoughtful, joyful readiness. The focus shifts from the demand of the apostle to the honor of the givers.
Ah, I see. Because if he had arrived and had to shame them for not having it ready.
Exactly. The gift would instantly become compelled. The grace is gone.
And the language he used, the vocabulary for these offerings, it reflects that. He didn't just call it money. He called the contributions either service to the saints or
generous gifts.
Generous gifts. It's a total spiritual reframing of a financial act.
It is. It turns a simple donation into an act of dedicated service.
Okay, so if that internal willingness is the ultimate test, how does this no pressure prompting principle define what grace giving actually is? And, maybe more importantly, what are the pitfalls of pressure today?
Well, positively, grace giving is giving that's rooted in gratitude and freedom. The sources are so clear on this. High-pressure fundraising appeals are just fundamentally inconsistent with this principle.
So things like emotional manipulation, creating false urgency, guilt.
All of it. If you use those tactics, you're actively undermining the grace element. The strongest and really the only acceptable encouragement for giving should be the desire to please God, not to relieve your own guilt or to help an organization hit a quota.
That distinction is so important, and it of course brings up the very thorny issue of publicity. We're often taught that personal giving should be done in secret, but organizations need transparency. Where do the sources draw that line?
The line is drawn at the individual. Our readings point back to that basic principle in Matthew 6. Don't publicize your personal contributions.
Right, don't sound a trumpet.
Exactly. The individual act is a private matter.
Yeah.
If you publicize your own gift, you're just risking it becoming about boasting.
But the sources are also clear that this restriction doesn't apply in the same way to the organization itself.
That's right. It is explicitly not wrong for the collective body, like the church, to publicly announce the total offering amount they received.
And why is that okay?
It's about accountability and transparency with how resources are being used. It doesn't violate any individual's privacy, but it maintains the stewardship of the institution as a whole.
So let's say a collective total is announced, or a major donor's name somehow becomes known. How do we do that motive check? What is the real difference between boasting and just trying to inspire other people?
This is the essential nuance, isn't it? If the motive is self-aggrandizement, to show off how wealthy or influential you are, it is 100% boasting. It's not grace-giving. But if the desire is genuinely to inspire others to be generous, maybe by showing financial integrity or just setting an example of commitment, then God's grace can work through that.
So it's about the direction of the attention.
Exactly. Are you trying to draw attention to yourself or to the need and the grace that made the gift possible in the first place?
This critique of motive then naturally extends to certain, theological movements we see globally. Our source material has a pretty clear warning about prosperity or abundance theology.
It's a very sharp critique. The sources point out that under this kind of theology, some organizations encourage these massive, very public offerings. And there's often this implied or even explicit promise of a material return for your gift.
Right.
The danger is that the whole structure starts to look like, a folk ritualistic exchange.
A transaction. You give money, X, and you expect God to give you health or wealth, Y, right back.
Immediately. And when that transaction fails, what happens? Massive disappointment. The sources say that when the promised abundance doesn't show up, many people get disillusioned and just leave the church entirely.
Because the core relationship was damaged.
It proves the transactional focus was wrong from the start. The sources just keep coming back to this. Genuine giving has to be rooted in gratitude for what you already have. It's less about the amount and more about diligent management stewardship of all your finances.
Gratitude. That really shifts the focus from receiving to managing. Okay, let's transition to how that internal motive shows up on the outside. Specifically, the danger of display and extravagance.
Extravagance is, it's often the clearest sign that someone, the giver or the recipient, has totally missed the point of stewardship.
The sources use this really powerful analogy comparing high-pressure appeals to modern advertising.
A great comparison.
It's so relatable. Advertising gets people to buy things they never needed by, triggering hidden desires and making wants feel like needs, and it leads to so much waste.
And if contributions are induced by those same tactics, making you feel guilty or rushed or like you're not enough, then the giver misses the entire point of being a good steward. You're being prompted by an external manipulative desire, not an internal thoughtful commitment.
It's not stewardship, it's just a lack of impulse control.
That's a good way to put it.
This brings us to these striking real-world examples the sources use, comparing different ministry leaders. They paint two incredibly different pictures.
On one side, you have example one. These are international evangelists or trainers who display immense personal wealth.
We're talking private jets.
Private jets, wearing bespoke, unbelievably expensive suits. Tens of thousands of dollars, Armani has mentioned. And these luxury watches like Patek Philippe. The spectacle is just overwhelming.
Okay, so what's the contrasting picture?
Pastors like Sun Decheng or Teng Chongrong, their travel is, at most, business class, never private. They wear simple, plain suits. The whole point is to prioritize the clear, powerful delivery of the message over any kind of expensive display or fanfare.
Their life choices are about minimizing distraction.
Yes.
So what's the big takeaway from these examples for someone listening? The source's conclusion is pretty blunt. Decades of a leader's observable conduct are far more telling than the immediate content of their message.
Absolutely. The sermon might be all about humility, but if the leader's life is defined by extravagance, that visual dissonance just screams louder than any words.
Yeah.
It forces you to ask, is this person a good steward? Or are they just a high-level consumer?
Right. The consistency of their lifestyle becomes the barometer for the integrity of their message.
It does.
That forces us to look beyond just the act of giving to the entire financial picture, which leads us right to the 4 pillars of good financial stewardship that our sources say have to go along with joyful giving.
Right, and these 4 pillars are really comprehensive. They cover income, giving, management, and how you treat other people.
Okay, pillar 1, the foundation.
Diligently work hard for your income. Earn a good salary through honest effort. Stewardship begins with ethical, productive work.
Pillar 2, the contribution itself.
Offer the first fruits, your contributions, to God for the legitimate and necessary use of the church. This makes giving a priority, not an afterthought.
Okay, pillar 3, this seems to be the strategic management piece.
Yes, manage finances shrewdly. The sources break this into 2 very active parts. They use these specific terms, Kayuan and Jiliu.
Let's pause and unpack those because they seem really important to the source's view on strategy.
Okay, so Kayuan is like the open source approach. It means actively investing and trying to increase your income. You should seek growth.
And the other one.
Jiliu, that's the reduce flow approach, actively saving and cutting unnecessary expenses. And what the sources stress is that you can't just do one. They're two sides of the same coin of shrewd management.
So it's not enough to just focus on earning more.
No. You have to be just as focused on spending less and strategically managing what you have.
That sounds like pretty standard financial advice. What makes it a spiritual or ethical principle here?
It connects right back to grace giving. The ethical piece is about responsibility, intentionality. Stewardship isn't passive. It is the thoughtful, diligent allocation of your limited resources to maximize their impact. If you mismanage your own money through waste or laziness, you're not really honoring the gift no matter what you earn.
As a discipline.
A spiritual discipline, yes.
And pillar 4, which goes beyond just formal giving.
Treat others generously. This takes generosity beyond the collection plate and into your everyday life. How you tip, how you respond to a friend in need.
And this all comes back around to the core motive, doesn't it? Joyful giving is critical. The sources say that reluctant giving, or giving done just to save face, is nothing more than social display.
Yeah, if you're giving just to avoid embarrassment or to keep up with your peers, the gift is wasted. It's empty.
Yeah.
It lacks that internal grace that Paul required.
Okay, let's look at this fascinating and honestly pretty jarring anecdote the sources share. It really highlights the tension when a generous steward faces relentless demand. It's about a dedicated brother in Taipei who works in the financial sector.
Right, and this guy, he represents this incredible, anonymous, long-term stewardship. For over a decade, he has consistently channeled huge sums of money through his pastor to support needy groups, clergy families, churches, you name it.
So the pastor is just the channel.
An ethical channel, yes. It sounds like the perfect system for large-scale grace giving.
But that generosity came with this huge, unintended cost to the donor himself.
It did. The donor admitted, quite honestly, that the constant, overwhelming volume of requests he gets year after year from people who know he's generous has become a great nuisance or distress to him.
That is just so insightful. It's jarring to think that the sheer number of requests, even legitimate ones, can turn generosity from a joy into a burden. It just erodes the whole spirit of the gift.
And that burden creates a serious ethical problem. The sources talk about the risk that this brother resorts to giving just to get rid of them.
Giving to make the person disappear.
Exactly, or to maintain social expectations. And when that happens, you completely trivialize the critical difference between a person's genuine need and their simple desire.
That's a powerful internal check for anyone who gives regularly. If you find yourself giving just to make the request go away, you've lost the stewardship perspective. It really shows that discerning true need versus just a want disguised as an appeal is a critical area for spiritual growth.
That discernment is wisdom. And we kind of end where we started, with the need for true religious temperance or restraint in all our financial matters. The assumption that more is always a blessing, whether it's more income or more gifts, is fundamentally challenged by these sources.
So the ultimate focus has to be on knowing what is just enough.
Exactly. The inability to find what the sources call joyful contentment or pleasure in simple living just creates this spiritual vacuum that greed rushes right into.
And if you believe more is better, you inevitably risk falling into greed. That attitude affects not just what you want to get, but it also influences the expectations you put on giving.
Right. The final goal, as the sources put it, is to be a good steward of both your money and your heart.
So if joyful contentment is the necessary backdrop for grace giving, here's the final thought. How might actively seeking ways to reduce unnecessary spending, that Jiliu principle of saving, inspire more grace giving than simply focusing all your energy on how to increase your income? That shift from acquisition to reduction might be the key tension for you to explore this week.
Focus on simplifying your life, on what you don't need. That clarity frees up both your financial resources and, I think, your mental capacity to give willingly and joyfully when a real need appears. It transforms giving from just another line item on a budget into a deliberate act of freedom.
Until the next deep dive, be well informed.